Welcome, everyone, to the Cornell Veterinary Podcast, the show where we take a deep dive into all of the discovery, care, and learning that happens at you-know-where, Cornell University's College of Veterinary Medicine. I am your fabulous host, Dr. Michelle Moyle, visiting assistant clinical professor, and hopefully, again, your favorite Purina veterinarian, and might I add, a person who has finally caught up on all of the seasons of The Bear and Only Murders in the Building. And I think that is quite an accomplishment. Now, speaking of accomplishments, I have a guest on today who destroys my accomplishment of binge watching a TV show by far. Dr. Amandine Gamble, assistant professor in the Department of Public and Ecosystem Health, is joining us. I'm very excited. I'm going to read. This bio is amazing. She studies the dynamics between disease pathogens and their hosts. You know me, people. You know I'll ask her about it, especially birds and bats. Very cool. She holds a veterinary degree from Alfort National Veterinary School, a master's of science in animal physiology and behavior from Strasbourg University, and a PhD, no big deal, in population biology and ecology from Montpellier University. All of those institutions in France, which I would also love to touch upon. She has done her postdoc and fellowship training at the National Center for Scientific Research in France, at UCLA, and the University of Glasgow in the UK. I love me a world traveler. Welcome to the show, Dr. Gamble. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. And nice meeting you all, and a very flattering introduction.
Yes. Oh my God. It took a lot of breath, but that's an incredible bio. And okay, so if everybody's listened before, I hope I have some return listeners. They know that I have a set of questions kind of all ready for you, but I just want to dive into your travel and I'll ask you more later, but can you tell me, do you have a favorite place to travel to before we dive into all your science?
I guess it's a mix of I like going to new places, but I do have a little sweet spot in my heart for the Falkland Islands where I do my field work. So I guess we might talk more about that. But I love islands, and that's one of the places where I, almost get to call home now. So I really love that place.
That's very cool, first of all. I'm I get to call Ithaca home, and I love Ithaca, but your version of home here is very exciting. Okay, so let me jump in because the info I have says you started out as a veterinarian, and I think it's very interesting to hear about people's journeys because a lot of us start as a veterinarian. I think, just thinking about treating animals traditionally, she says, in air quotes, for those of you who can't see me, right? Like in a hospital setting. So did you think about going into practice, or did you know you wanted to go into research, like you were immediately interested?
So I didn't know research at all when I started vet school. So I wasn't considering research. Was I considering practice is a bit more complicated question. I think I had it in mind just because, when you're in vet school, you always hear about when you're going to have your own practice, you're going to do this and
exactly.
that. But I was also always looking a little bit at other things. So I was thinking maybe I can work with wildlife and get to travel. And also I grew up with huskies. So I was really into reading books about explorers visiting remote places with their dogs, and also racing with the dogs. So I was interested in maybe being a sport animal vet, that kind of things.
Very cool. Yeah.
But then during vet school, I met so one of my teacher was also a researcher in animal behavior. Introduced me to research, and I was like, yes, this is what I want to do. And so that's during vet school that it happens.
That is very interesting. For those of you, again, not watching, or maybe those of you in small animal medicine, when she said huskies, I went, oh. And that's because I pictured the husky yowl, right? They have a very characteristic voice, and they tend to use it. I just want to put that out there. But they are an incredibly cool breed. And actually, Purina has done some research on sled dogs, working dogs. So that is really neat to hear that that's kind of what brought you into this. And I like hearing that someone introduced you to research. We talk a lot about mentorship here. And so that's really great. So Is that what got you interested in disease ecology? Like, how did you get there?
Yeah, so I think it was like my way of so when I discovered research, and it was so again this person that introduced me to research was working. She did a very cool PhD thesis on social thermoregulation in penguins. So that's when penguins like huddle together to keep each other warm.
What? Okay, so all of these
Yeah.
penguins are huddled to
Yeah.
get warm, but they have these social interactions because they're so close together.
Yeah.
It's like the New York City subway people.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Exactly same setup. But so she was working on like that interaction between animals between one another, but also like the animals with the environment, and just like
Yeah.
how do you survive in a very cold place? And so that class is so interesting because it's mixing things I was interested in but I didn't know about, like animal behavior and ecology, but also things I had learned in vet school like physiology. And so I kind of like started looking that way and more like the ecology part of things, because I was like, oh, that's something I don't know yet, but I would love to learn. And then I found an opportunity to start a PhD on infectious disease ecology. And so I had the same idea of like, oh, I can use everything I learned in vet school regarding disease. So I can start not completely useless, but still get to discover ecology, for which I was I didn't know anything. So that was like the part I was learning. So just like a nice mix between my background and my aspirations, I would say.
Yeah. Will you share with our listeners, for some who don't know, what ecology is?
Yeah. So ecology, I guess we use the term for like with different meanings.
Sure.
But really ecology means interactions between, it's the science of the interactions between living organism and their environment. So their environments include other living organisms that can be from the same species or different species, and also the physical environment. So like the weather and the landscape and so on. And so, for instance, when we talk about host-parasite interaction, it's like the ecology of the interactions between like a host, so it can be like an animal, and anything that would parasitize the animal, so a virus, a pathogen, a virus, bacteria, fungi.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you first explained it, I was like, oh, it's like a fish living in the ocean, right? There are other creatures in there. It's also interacting with the water. But I want to make sure that people understand, it even could be like a virus living in an animal or a human. That also has these interactions. And those are very important to figure out for disease. Is that?
Yeah. And you can even go like at a smaller scale, and you can imagine like within host ecology. So it could be like, for instance, studying interactions between two different viruses within a host, or like
oh my gosh,
the virus with the immune system of the host. So it's just like interactions at different scales.
Yeah.
And disease ecology is very cool because it integrates all of that. So you can have obviously the immune system is something very important to understand how an animal might control an infection. But also you can go all the way to like understanding how different populations of animals are connected through animal movements to try to understand how the pathogen might spread with those animals.
Right.
So you have everything from everything from the molecules up to like the world.
The physical, that's just such a little topic. I don't understand. Wow, so easy. And I very much appreciate that you developed this interest for ecology, and you said you knew nothing about it, and then you took all of your veterinary training and then look at where it's brought you. That's really exciting, because I talk a lot about maybe not knowing your journey in vet med, or maybe changing your journey, and you're like a beautiful example of that.
Yes, we can. So we can start our journey in, our career like without knowing what's going to happen, and it's fine. It can take more or less time to find a way.
She's a very smart doctor and researcher, and she said it will be fine. Yes,
it will be fine. And like definitely, like I'm surrounded by a lot of people who had that vocation for research since the beginning, but also a lot of other people who thought they would become physicists and now they are biologists, or people who thought they would work, in a bank and now they're doing mathematical modeling to study species interactions in like very remote places. So like they're like everything can lead to everything else.
Yes.
Yeah, but also like when I was in vet school, I heard all the time, you're learning are just very transferable skills, and I think it's quite vague when you hear that.
Yeah, we don't
You're
believe
like,
it.
oh,
It's
yeah,
true. It's true.
but yeah, it is true. So I still had to learn a lot of things after, but
Sure.
I think we also like just train to learn because we have to learn so much in vet school.
Yes.
But we get that that just like foundational knowledge and way of working that makes us available, like able to learn just more and
all sorts of
whatever
things.
we want.
Yeah, I love that. Ooh, do whatever we want. I blacked out when she said mathematical modeling, but I'm back. I'm back, everybody. And I think why I really love hearing this, and for everybody listening, this is a recurring theme here on the Cornell Vet Podcast, because I love to talk about something called diversity of thought. You're working with a team that are not just veterinarians. Like you said, you're talking with physicists, you're talking to mathematicians, and that is what helps make projects and research thrive. So I really appreciate that you brought that up. So I have that you've done a lot of research on sub-Antarctic seabirds. So, well, one, what does sub-Antarctic mean for everyone listening? Like where in the world is that? And, why these birds? So just
so we have about Antarctica. So sub-Antarctica is just the part of the world that is slightly above Antarctica. So it's not yet completely Antarctica, but almost.
Ish. It's Antarctic-ish. I've heard that. That's medical terms, people. Yeah.
And so at the beginning, I said the Falkland Islands is a place that I really love, and that's so it's an archipelago that is located between the tip of South America and the tip of Antarctica. So it's right in between.
Wow.
And also, so besides the location, when you look at the globe, it's also characterized by some specific traits. So it's close or in an ocean that we call the Southern Ocean, that we tend to forget when we draw
yes,
all
we
of
do.
the oceans.
Yeah, we just ignore that ocean. We're like, I don't know, is it the Atlantic?
So it's at the bottom of the Atlantic, the Indian Ocean, and the Pacific Ocean. But it has its own currents, and you find like very specific species there. And so those subantarctic islands are in the Southern Ocean, and we do find species that you might have heard of, like penguins, albatrosses, lots of seals, that kind of things live on those islands.
Wow! And so then, what drew you to like seabirds? Why them?
So I think like the full story that probably loops back.
That's what I was after. That's what I was after, everyone.
To the husky thing. I think it's because I grew up I had huskies, so I was reading books on people who were exploring the Arctic, and also at the time the Antarctic, because a long time ago we used to have dogs in Antarctica. And so I was reading all of those books, and when I kind of randomly got an opportunity to do a research internship in a lab that was studying penguin behavior, I didn't really care what birds or penguins, but I was like, oh, this is the systems I've heard about when I was a kid, the snow and the ice pack and all that. So I got excited about that, and I started working on penguins that way. And then when I started, so at that time it was only data analysis. I want to say no penguins were involved in my internship, only the data that were collected by someone else. So just to say, statistical analysis can take you all the way to Antarctica too.
I'm sorry, I blacked out again. She said statistical analysis. Yeah. Okay, I'm here.
But they can take you to cool places. That was the key message. So if you're offered a cool data set to analyze, go for it, because it could be the first step to something bigger.
All of the data sets are there, right? And it could be your starting point. So you are, this is, I think, great, because you highlighted that when you were a child, like literally the draw for the snow and the cold from this other breed you were interested in brought you to this place, and these data sets and all of this research led you then to these birds.
Yeah,
and I just think that that's so cool. She ran towards the snow people, and I'm in Ithaca trying to run away. Just kidding. I love it. It's sometimes a little too much snow.
Yeah.
So that's really cool. Okay, so we kind of heard how you ended up focusing your research there. So what is your research? Like what's happening there that maybe people should know about?
Yeah. So besides my draw for the snow and the animals on the snow,
and learning, yes,
and one of the reasons why some people work on seabirds, besides like some people can just be passionate about seabirds and they've always wanted to do that and they do that, but also they're just great models, like study models for research. So imagine if you're doing a PhD on polar bears. If you're lucky,
polar bears. It's in my head. I've got it.
If you're lucky, you might get to see like 10, 20 polar birds during your PhD and like get samples from a few of them. Everything is very intense to handle them and so on. If you work with seabirds, you go on an island, they always come to the same place at the same moment of the year, and you have tens of thousands of them. So you can collect a lot of samples, and you can also do a lot of things like, because they're quite big birds, we put rings on them to identify them. So like a leg ring, and we can like recapture the same bird from one year to another, because they are very, we say like faithful to their breeding site. So they find a nest and then they will try to stay on that one nest from one year to another. So for instance, we can track the whole life of, for instance, an albatross. They can live like really decades, like 40, 50, 60 years, and you can capture the same bird every year. And so you can track, the birds that are infected with one infectious disease, are they more likely to die or not? And are they developing some immunity? How long they're keeping their immunity for? So like all those questions that are usually really hard to address in wildlife, because it's really hard to access the animal. It's really hard to recapture the same individual. That we can do that with seabirds. And also they form colonies, so you really know like where they're gonna be and when, and you can really easily study things like you have like discrete units of thinking. It gets a bit abstract, but what I mean is, if you go in a forest, you can find a mouse anywhere, and you don't know where that mouse is coming from, because it could have crossed the road and come from the other side. But like, because seabirds are like, oh, this is my colony, I live here, you can really compare like one colony to another. You know that a bird in one colony is very likely from that one.
Their own almost independent populations.
Yes. So the way I talk about it sometimes, like for the metaphor for fellow researchers, is that every colony or every island is like a gigantic petri dish. So it's like, one replicate. And sometimes, so for instance, one of the questions I study is the impact of invasive species. So in particular, rats and mice on islands, and whether they can act as reservoirs for some pathogens that would impact the wildlife. So whether they can carry some pathogens that you wouldn't find otherwise on the islands, but that they brought with them, or they're maintaining, and then transmit to the wildlife. And so because in the same archipelago, you can have islands where rats and mice were introduced next to an island where they've never been introduced. You can compare. So you have like a case control study kind of, but it was, you didn't put the rats. They came on their own, or like someone went by accident. But you can still like draw on that like natural experimental setup that you have.
Wow. So I love what I'm hearing. One, I love that we're studying seabirds, because they just really like routine, right? They're like, oh no, I summer here. Like, this is where I go. My people will be there. My family will be there. And then you naturally can compare those. Wow, I'm so excited. I'm hitting the microphone. Like, you can compare those families. And then do you find that, I'm really fascinated by this example you used with the rats. Do you find that some of this research designs itself? You're like, oh, these rats weren't on this island. They were there by mistake on a ship, or who knows. And now you have something to compare it to, because you have disease in a population you didn't expect it to be in.
Yeah, so it's, I would say,
That's cool.
Like for like the research I do, a lot of it is like so everyone has a lot of questions to like understand the word, but like finding the systems where you can address those questions is really an important part of the job.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, we did find some. So for a very concrete example, and like one study system that I think is very cool. During my PhD, I worked on that island called Amsterdam Island, in the middle of the southern Indian Ocean. And on this island, we've had outbreaks of avian cholera. So it's a disease
avian cholera?
Yes. So it's a disease that is caused by some bacteria that we call Pasteurella multocida, for like the vets in the room. And we know that this is from poultry. It's been, every now and then we have outbreaks in poultry farms. It kills a lot of chicken and turkey. But every now and then we also have outbreaks in wildlife. And in most places where we have had outbreaks, you usually have an outbreak 1 year, but then because all of the birds are migrating at sea during winter, so that's what seabirds do. Like they're called seabirds because they come on land really just to breed. But all of the rest of their life is at sea. They sleep at sea. They fish at sea. So they're really on their nests only when they need to incubate and take care of the chick. But the rest of the time they're at sea.
They're out.
So when they go at sea, because they're all scattered all over that huge ocean, there is very little opportunities for disease transmission. So most of the disease transmission happen on the island during the breeding season.
Got it. When they're in close contact.
Yeah. So when they go away in winter, usually when there are pathogens, that's like a time where they could fade out, so just disappear from the population. So it's kind of like, measles outbreaks. We have them when the kids are going back to school, but then summer vacation, everyone recovers.
Right.
So the same kind of dynamic. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so there is that one island, so Amsterdam Island, where we had just repeated outbreaks. Every year that we would have outbreaks, and we were wondering how are the birds keeping that bacteria? Like, why do they keep being infected? So eventually we thought, okay, there is one species that remains on the island all year long, and that's introduced rats. So we have introduced rats and mice there, and that's all of the native wildlife is migratory. The only resident wildlife
who stays year round.
Yeah, that's introduced rats and mice. So we looked in the rats, we found the bacteria in the rats, including in winter when the birds are not here. So I thought, okay, it looks like we might have a potential reservoir here. So like something that is keeping the bacteria on the island, and sustaining it on the island. And so that was the first step of the research. And the second step that is still ongoing is that because rodents, they might act as reservoir for disease, but they also have a lot of other negative impact on the system. Yeah. So they prey on the eggs, they prey on the chicks, they also eat the native plants, and some of the smaller birds. So most seabirds are ground nesting, so they nest on the ground, so not in trees. So they are accessible for predators quite easily. And so some of the species are locally extinct from the island because rodents are eating them, like the small seabirds.
Yeah.
So the nature reserve that is managing this island has launched a big program to remove the rats and mice from the island. And they just did that last winter there, so last summer for us. And now we're going to see if removing the rats and mice is also going to remove the disease, which is what so it's what we would expect based on like our understanding of the system, but it's like a very cool way to test it experimentally. So I was saying before, like we didn't put the rats and the mice, but we can remove them now. So it's very expensive, but we can do it. And so we have that pre-post treatment now that we can look at. So now in the coming years, we are going to keep on tracking the dynamic of the disease, see if it's still around or if it went away with the rodents. So we can address that kind of like that kind of question in like those very cool, like opportunistic experiments in a way. It's not like we were not like this is our protocol, we're gonna do that.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah. So it inadvertently presents itself to you, not like perfectly, but it is. It's opportunistic for sure. I very much appreciate that you brought up. I haven't discussed Pasteurella multocida in many, many years, probably since before I took my boards. But why I like it is you're bringing it up with seabirds, and then you mentioned that other people have experienced it, right, with poultry populations, chicken populations. So it can affect farms here. It can affect. So again, your research may seem rather unique to some, but the organism you're studying can affect so many populations. So in my brain, even though you're studying seabirds, it still has just far-reaching impact. And I really appreciate that, right? Because there are mice and rats on farms, naturally and things like that.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's equal, but it is nice to hear that perspectives maybe can shift in another part of veterinary medicine based on what you're doing.
Yeah, and that's really the big question I'm interested in is trying to understand. So I look at pathogens that can infect several different species of hosts. So multi-host pathogens. And the thing I really like with them is trying to understand, okay, we have all those different species that can be infected, but then because all those species are different inherently, they're gonna play a different role in the dynamic of the pathogen. So for instance, I was talking about the rats and mice that can be a reservoir for a pathogen because they have that one specificity in that system that they stay there while the other animals are going away. But then they're not going to be the one who are spreading the pathogen because they can't leave the island. But so we have other, like the birds now can potentially be the vector for the pathogen to move around. And so research is really, like trying to link the ecology. So like the way those animals are interacting with their environment and their and like other animals from their own species and other species. So the ecology of the host with the dynamic of the pathogen, and now the different ecologies are driving different roles in the epidemiological network of this pathogen.
This is really interesting because she's studying a pathogen that can go into multiple different species. And in some species, they just hold it, right? It doesn't make them ill, potentially, right? It may not kill them, but they certainly can spread the disease. And then in another species, it might, in fact, decimate a population, injure them. So how it acts, like we're talking, I love this ecology. This is like ecology in a nutshell based on what you were saying earlier, because it really does affect the environment and other animals living in it. So that's really exciting. That's exciting. I don't want any animals to die, but it's very exciting to hear about, And so I thought to myself when you're like, oh, I was in the Falkland Islands. I'm like, I wonder what the Wi-Fi is like, right? Like, how is it like working? I bet you can't really get a pizza delivered. What is it like working in like this part of the world?
Yeah, so the Falkland Island is its own beast because it's like the only Sub-Antarctic island that has a established civilian population. So most of the other islands in that part of the world, they only have research stations.
Oh wow!
But on the Falkland Island, there's an established population. So I would say people like you and I, but they do have a slightly different lifestyle. So Wi-Fi is very bad.
Okay, but it's there. Yeah. But it's there. Got it.
It's there, but it really looks like the Wi-Fi like we had it in the early 2000s. So it's like, you have to count, you have to be careful how much data you're using and so on. So I'm not as responsive on my email when I'm in the field.
Understandable. Friends, family, listen. Yeah. She can't get back to you right now.
No. But otherwise, I would say, so how is it to do research there? So on one side, it looks very extreme because it's so far, but it's also not as extreme as some places that are closer to us. So, for instance, there's no risk of that. So there's no tropical disease there. So, I think about like my friends who are like working in South America, like northern South America, where you can get dengue and you have to do all those vaccines before you leave. There's none of that there.
Been there.
Thinking about my friends who are working,
just with vaccines. Okay. Just with vaccines. I want to make sure I prepare for travel. Yes.
Thinking about my friends who are working in the northern part of North America, where you could have grizzly bears or polar bears, and you need to be ready for like an encounter with a dangerous animal. None of that there. And no big flood, no typhoon, nothing like that. With that said, the logistic is still very heavy. So it's mostly like the remoteness make that we have to plan everything a lot in advance, and and also like for working with students, for instance, it's it's complicated because I'm sending because when I send someone, it has to be for a long time because there's just not enough. You cannot just go there for a week. So it needs to be someone I know will be okay being away for so long. That the quality of the samples and the data collected will be to good quality.
Right.
So
We want someone trustworthy who mentally and physically can be far away for quite a period of time. This makes perfect sense.
So it's just like a slower process because you need to find people who either already have experience or typically, you recruit a PhD student, and the first year you do some local field work, and once they're comfortable with the animals, they're comfortable being in the field, then you can send them there.
Gotcha.
So it's the logistical aspects are definitely heavier than in other places. But I would say it's still an extreme place. It's always very windy.
Gotcha.
And sometimes we are far from any communication mean. Sometimes we have to do a lot of hiking to reach the place we want to reach.
I'm out. I was never in, folks, but I'm certainly out because she said hiking. Yes.
Okay. We found your nemesis is statistical analysis and hiking.
That is correct. You have solved it.
Okay.
So you have these challenges, right? It's physically taxing. You have the wind, you have communication, you have all of these things. At the end of the day, or when you're back here, what do you feel is the biggest reward? Like when you walk away at the end of each project or each trip, what says to you yes, and then I will be here again because this?
I think my proudest moment, it's kind of stupid, but so
never stupid.
As I was saying, there is a population living there, and over the years, so I've been there 5 times now, and I'm actually leaving at the end of the week for my 6th time. So it's been 5 years that I see people.
We just got her, folks. Yeah.
Just on time. And so I started, being attached to
you get to know them.
So yeah. And one of the things that made me very proud last year is sad thing that happened last year that we have a highly pathogenic avian influenza, so bird flu, that reached the island. So
bird flu reached the island. Wow.
Yeah, so it went all the way to Antarctica. So now it's everywhere in the world except in Oceania. So Australia and New Zealand.
Australia.
Haven't had it yet.
New Zealand. Gotcha.
But it's also in Antarctica.
Wow.
So last year we had the first outbreaks, and because I had been working on infectious disease there for some years, I worked with the government to try to set up the monitoring and also the response to the outbreaks. So obviously it's really hard. We cannot just control the virus now that it's there, but we can try to do our best to limit the impact. So we increase biosecurity and limit the disturbance of the animals and so on. And because the Falkland Islands, it's a small community, it's only a couple of thousand people, and they communicate a lot with Facebook. And so all of the official announcements are on Facebook. And so the vets, the government vets posted a summary at the end of the season saying that that it has impacted a lot of the wildlife, but that we learned a lot, and it was notably thanks to our research, and that they would carry on collaborating with us. And I was it feels, because sometimes our research feels disconnected from the reality.
Sure.
Because we're in our labs or in our remote islands, and then we're not actually we're learning a lot, but the steps between learning something and developing an application can be a very big step.
Yeah.
And so that was a very one moment was it's nice to see that what we're doing in the field is directly helping with the management of an environmental crisis in that case.
Wow. Is there, in your most recent research or even in the course of the career, is there something you walked away from and you're like, whoa, that is the most interesting thing I have ever encountered? Do you ever have a moment like that where you're just like, what? Or even important in the grand scheme of this disease or what you do? Is there something a thing you walked away from and you're like, wow, this is a big deal?
I think I don't know. I feel like it might have happened like several times, but now I'm lost with the stress of the recording. No, so like my brain is a bit like focused on the last few years, but
Yeah.
so I think like so one of the big things that you kind of touched on a bit earlier is so when we started working on bird flu, so it's called highly pathogenic avian influenza.
Yeah.
With the idea that it's highly pathogenic, it's killing its host very efficiently.
Yes.
And it's been considered for a very long time that if an animal gets infected, it's gonna die.
It's
and
pretty
so
lethal. Yeah.
with our surveillance, so one of the things we do in the field is that we try to not only look at the animals that are being infected and obviously dying. So like you mentioned for the cholera and the rats, like they might not die, and so they might not be like, no one might be looking at them because you're like, oh, they're fine.
Right.
But actually, when you look at the ones that are fine, you do find a lot of individuals that are infected. And so what we did there is we collected samples from a lot of different species of birds. So in total, we have like close to 20 species that we've been sampling.
Wow.
And we do find very contrasted response to infection. So some species are just dying. Like if they get infected, they die. So that's the case for albatrosses, for instance. So we think we
so
lost...
the albatross is super sensitive.
Yeah. So like we think we lost like tens of thousands of them the first year of the outbreak.
That's heartbreaking.
And then you have other species where we had some individuals dying. So we knew they were affected, but we don't know if all of them are dying. And now that we look for... So the way we look at it is we take blood samples and we look for antibodies against the virus. If we do find antibodies against the virus, so that's part of the immune response. And that tells us, so you produce only antibodies only after you've been exposed to the pathogen. So if you've never met one pathogen, or if you've never been vaccinated against that pathogen, you won't have antibodies against it.
Perfect.
But if you met it once, or if you got vaccinated, then you will have antibodies for some time after you've encountered the vaccine or the pathogen.
Yeah.
And so we sampled a lot of the birds, and we found that, for instance, penguins, some of them died, but we also found a few that had antibodies. So it's telling us that some of them are surviving. Yeah. And they might be developing some population immunity. Like some of them are developing immunity, they might survive, and in the long term, maybe they won't be sensitive to the next outbreaks because they have that immunity now. And then at the other side of the spectrum, we have scavenging species. So the birds that will feed on other dead animals. Yeah. And so those ones, as you can expect, they're highly exposed to the virus because they're feeding on dead, like other birds that died from it. But they're not dying that much themselves. And so we find that now almost all of them have antibodies. So we have this very contrasted way of responding to the infection. And I think the very cool thing with that is like the lesson we can learn is when we if we want to understand why albatrosses are dying, we also need to sample, for instance, vultures, because maybe the vultures are the one moving it, or maybe the vultures are going to tell us where the virus is, because we can go on an island where we missed it because we were not here at the moment of the outbreak. But now if we sample a vulture from that island and we find antibodies, we can say, oh, the virus has been here. And so really if you're interested in why one species is dying, you sample all of the other species.
Yeah. You've got me. That is interesting, right? Why are albatrosses dying? You don't expect someone say, well, I think we should look at vultures. Yeah. Right? That's but that's just science, people. Yeah. That's great.
And so, unfortunately, the why they are some are dying and some are not, we don't know yet.
Sure.
But it's that's what we're working on. In the next step of our research is trying to understand if it's something due to the genetic or the microbiome or the immunity. And so as you mentioned some questions ago, it's part of the so now I'm working with immunologists and geneticists and so on to try to understand if we can find the answer to that question, and then maybe use it for knowing if we do want to vaccinate some birds, which one should we vaccinate, or if we want to develop any other mitigation measure, inform it based on where it could be the most efficient.
Yeah, I think we were talking about it a lot for a while, highly pathogenic avian influenza, and as the news cycle comes, different things arise, but this is still a very, very prevalent issue. And I'm glad you're researching it. Is that what you're most excited about, just trying to figure out that answer? Is there something right now that you're really excited about trying to tackle or try to find?
I think the general idea of like trying to understand why some species or some population are responding so differently to the same pathogen, and what does it mean as their for their role in the dynamic of the pathogen is super interesting to me. Also because as I mentioned, it's a way to then inform how we're gonna potentially control this pathogen. So for instance, if we say, okay, now we know that vultures are the ones spreading it. It's fictional. We don't know that. But if it was the case...
We are not blaming vultures. No. Vulture lovers everywhere. I promise. Yeah. This is an example.
Vultures are... they're cleaning carcasses. And carcass removal seems to be an efficient way to control the pathogen. So they're helping with that. But if we do find that then, they remove the carcasses from the environment, but then they fly somewhere else and they might move the pathogen, then it means, instead of trying to vaccinate hundreds of thousands of albatrosses and penguins, maybe you can just vaccinate the small population of vultures we have there. It's it's only a few thousand instead of tens and hundreds of thousands.
Yeah.
So there could be a more efficient way. And, then it gets to science fiction, but because they forage, they look for food on land while the penguins and albatrosses are looking for food at sea. Yes. So you cannot, sometimes you hear about for rabies, we do control rabies in the US by giving oral vaccines through bait.
Through bait.
Mm-hmm. So we can do that with albatrosses because you will need to go put a fish at sea. You don't know where they go at sea. So it's too complicated.
Yeah, that sounds a little difficult, even for a big team.
But with vultures, if you make something that looks like a dead bird and it's full of vaccine, maybe that could work. So I was saying it's science fiction because we don't have an oral vaccine yet available, and we're not sure that we can develop a vaccine that is actually stopping transmission. We know we have vaccines that can stop symptoms, but we're not sure about transmission yet. So there are still a lot of steps that other people should work on because I'm not doing vaccine development.
That's too much, other scientists. Yeah.
It's too much bench work for me. But
got it.
Guys in the audience, you can do that.
Okay,
and then reach out when you have it. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. I love that she's plugging that. Listeners, in the future, if you want to do vaccine science, she's got spots for you. Right? You do that part and then she could do this part. I love that.
I think really understanding who is doing what for the pathogen can help us understand where we should act to then stop those pathogens instead of panicking and either vaccinating everything, but then you lose a lot of resources. Or
this is a great example of where science is listen, we're trying to be efficient. We don't want to just blindly give injections to all these different animals. It's very costly, so we want to really focus on being efficient and vaccinate the population where we'll have the most impact, which I find very interesting. Sometimes science says you do have to vaccinate the whole population, and here science has told you, hopefully you can focus on one. So I think that's why research is incredibly important, and I'm really excited to talk to someone like you that does this research. So thank you for
and
that.
Also I think that the idea of sometimes we feel we have a vaccine, so the problem is solved, but it's actually not that easy because once we have the vaccine, deploying the vaccine in a way that is efficient. So for instance, you think about rabies, we've had a vaccine against rabies forever, for a very long time. But it's still a struggle, a huge burden on humanity. We're still losing a lot of people to a disease for which we do have a vaccine. So just to say so vaccines are a great tool. But having the vaccine is really just the first step. Then you need to understand what is the best, the most efficient way to deploy it.
I love my listeners getting to know your research, but I also want them to understand that researchers are human and they do human things, and they're not just doing research every single second of every single day. So, one, is there, now I just need to know this is not even on my written questions, people. Is there a restaurant on those islands that you're that I go there every time? Or is there, what are we dealing with here? How remote? What's happening?
Yeah, so there is a little town called Stanley where there are a few restaurants. So there's a bunch of them. And
that's all I need.
So I go to different ones. I don't know. Every year I do my little tour. I go to the
that.
restaurants. There is
Food
one I
tour.
haven't tried yet. It's on my list for this year. I'm like, I should definitely try. It's a wine bar that also has tapas, so I want to try this one.
Do they have a specialty at these restaurants that you're like, this is the food that this place is known for?
So one of the things the Falklands is like has a lot of, and is very powerful, is the mutton meat. So they do have a lot of like sheep farming,
Really?
and so they have a very, very good mutton meat. And it's quite so in France. So I'm French, as you got from the introduction and from my accent, maybe. In France,
I'm just kidding, guys. Yeah,
we do eat a lot of lamb, but I always found that mutton was too strong of the taste. But like the mutton from the Falklands, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's because they're happy sheep roaming.
They've lived a life where they're walking around, right?
They're
breathing that
views.
sea air. Yeah,
and so they're delicious.
Wow, low stress mutton is her favorite. That's a very reasonable answer.
And what I really like is that I can, when I go on islands where I work with farmers on their island, like I get to, like buy them a chop of their mutton.
Yeah. I love that I'm having this conversation. I'm a vegetarian and I'm like, yes, like low stress mutton meat. But
so I'm not vegetarian, so I'm not coming from that side. But I also like because like it's like family size production. I avoid industrial production.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, but so obviously, I'm not saying it comes with no environmental impact because it's small. It still has.
Right.
There's still some impact of just having species that were originally not on the island that are now on the island.
Yeah.
But I still feel like I know the animal welfare standards are on top of it.
And for you, that makes you feel like good about what you're eating. Yeah. This is no judgment on meat eaters, people. I just happen to say that I'm a vegetarian. And so what do you do when you're not working as a researcher, when you're not a scientist in science?
So you were asking for restaurants, but I think eating is probably my biggest activity.
Winner.
Yeah. Okay, so we do converge on that.
Great. Yeah.
For food. And so I've been in Ithaca only for a little bit less than 2 years now.
Wow.
So I'm still like in the exploratory phase. I'm like doing all the wineries and cideries and trying the different restaurants.
There's a lot of that here.
In Ithaca and around. I do love a good beer, and I have developed a taste for American beer that I didn't know before moving to the US. So I do, I'm one of those people who do like an IPA.
Have you been to Salt Point Brewing yet?
I have been, yeah. And
shout out to Salt Point.
And it's my spot. Relates to the fact that also there's in the Falkland Islands there is one brewery and one gin distillery, and so they have delicious locally brewed beers and distilled gin. So
gin, wow.
Yeah.
Well,
so it's part of my activities, even when I'm there. It's like my foodie moment.
That's
consuming local goods.
So what is
beer and gin?
Beer and gin. You heard it here. After they're done, after everybody's done researching, and when we're done with the day at the vet hospital, we need a drink. Just saying.
Especially when you don't,
that's okay.
In the wind all day.
Right. Yeah. She's like, they're wind blown. Like, I need a beer. I come in at the end of the day and I'm like, someone hand me a cookie. And that's okay. Sugar is my crutch. And so do you have any like hobbies other than delicious dining?
I think like just like exploring the area. So because
if she says hiking again, I'm out.
Yeah, no. Okay. So not necessarily even hiking, just walking.
Yeah.
No, but like just like like visiting new towns around and so on. I think so. I haven't been very good at committing to hobbies where like joining a club where like if you don't show up to the training it's annoying everyone, or like learning like to play an instrument where if you like don't practice for 2 months then you lose everything. So I'm moving a lot, so like my year at the moment is usually like from January to June I'm in the US, like in Ithaca because I'm teaching, but then in summer I usually go back home a little bit and then I come back for a few months and then I usually spend 3 months in the field. So I just like, it's really hard to like commit to activities that require commitment.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But also because like over the last, I don't know, 15 years, I've never lived more than 3 years in one given place. I'm in that constant tourist mood. I'm like constantly a tourist everywhere I go. So I'm just like really enjoying like visiting, getting to know the places in which I'm living. And yeah.
I want to be mindful of your time, but I'm going to ask you a final question based on this because I think it might be important for people listening. How do you feel while you're traveling, because you're doing these good things for the planet and for animals, and you're traveling for large stints? How do you manage your friends, your family? If there's a partner, how do you manage that, or even mentally, and being in this different mode?
Yeah, I think it can. I don't know. So I've become more social than I was when I was a kid. So I think I make friends more easily now. And it's like, also like that freedom of knowing like, okay, you're coming somewhere and you might never see those people again. So like you can just be yourself.
So why not? Right.
Yeah, enter that when you are just yourself and you don't care, it's actually easier to connect with people than when you're like very focused on how you may
like a long-term relationship.
Yeah.
Got it.
Yeah, and also, so I think it's like, obviously there's a lot of people that I've gained and then lost in my life because like we just like it's
you part
in
ways.
a long time. Yeah. But I think like just being at peace with that people are like that they don't need, it's not something you acquire and keep forever.
Right.
Then like they can be part of your life. And then I do have like some very long term like friendships and so on that I've been like, I think like they've survived all those years of me traveling, and so now I'm very confident in the fact that they're gonna survive forever because like they survived so far, so it's gonna stay. I think it helps that most of my friends in France are still living in the same area. Sure. So they're still like very connected to each other. So when I come, I can see all of them, and also like it's like a group to which I'm part of the group, but like, can I in and out like physically, but so it's like when I go back, I know this group is still here, like, I can just find them. And I was like my friends in France are like childhood friends, and I know like I got lucky to meet them early in my life, and sometimes people meet their lifetime friends later in life, but so I think it's like be yourself. And I guess so my mother was also traveling a lot when she was young. So I think, she's never been angry at me for like being away so much, which helps.
That's a big deal.
Yeah.
I mean, more than, because family loves you and I know they want you to be around, but you're off trying to do these things for you and for the planet. So that can be hard. So that's really nice to hear.
Yeah. And then I enjoyed the diversity in my life, like in my job and in my life. So like, I'm not like in front of my computer all day, every day.
Yeah.
I get like moments where I'm away, and people I meet now, they know it's part of my life. So they kind of deal with it. If they don't, then it was nice meeting them. But
so what I hope people take away from that is I really love hearing that you know who you are right now. You're open to meeting new people. When you've met your people remain your people, and some will not stay in your life forever. Life lessons, right? As a scientist. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Thank you. Because again, it's really important for me that people understand that they have to make decisions for themselves, and they have to take care of their physical health and their mental health and still get to do what they love and still get to be with the people they love. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no worries. Happy. I don't know. I know it's not a life for everyone, but like for some people it is, and it's great. And
exactly.
And I also like, I was saying like I feel home in the Falklands, but it's because I also like my little routine there because I have my friends I see every year, and so it's also part of the chaos is actually having little routines everywhere.
And it's interesting that you said that, much like the penguins who love routine. We've learned that here, people listening. So even though it may sound like your life is not a routine, everywhere you go has a routine. And for some, that's really nice.
Yeah, and it's actually, I go to the same place every year. So it's kind of, it's a meta routine.
But that's enough for some people, right? So like maybe just enough. So The moral of the story is there is something out there for everyone in veterinary medicine and science. And again, you can make it what you want it to be, and you could do amazing things for the earth and for our animals. Dr. Gamble, I am so thankful I had the opportunity to talk to you. It has been lovely getting to know you and getting to know the type of research you're doing and what you're doing for seabirds. We now all know what Antarctic means, right? Yes, that's how she referred to her notes quickly. We know all of these cool things. We know about mutton, which I'm going to take with me as a fun fact on the islands you're spending time on. And so again, I really appreciate you spending the time with us. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening to the Cornell Veterinary Podcast. I don't know how many of them are there, but whoever's listening, thanks for that. Keep listening and subscribe. Maybe give us a like on your favorite platform, and we will talk to you all soon.